was a very talented offensive player, scored some big goals for them, and was signed to a one-year AHL deal. While injuries, of course, led to him eventually being back in the ECHL, I definitely think he's a really, really interesting pickup for the Trois Rivières Lyon. One of the main things to note about Archambault, for people who are interested in me looking into him for come next season, is that he's got NHL hands. That's just my own opinion. I know it's kind of a bold statement to make. I think Archambault's hands are definitely that of an NHL player, and he's definitely there was some goals that he scored during his time with the Streakers Crunch that were highlight reel and definitely worthy of NHL ice. And I think when he is healthy and when he's got everything together, he's one of the best players in the ECHL. And I definitely think he will be the franchise player for the Trois Rivières Lyon at first glance.
Which is not only amazing on a marketing standpoint, of course, you're having a homegrown guy in Trois Rivières, being, the face of the franchise and whatnot. But I mean, it's an important part of his career, being 28 years old, and I'm sure that he's hoping to at least be able to get a call up and play for the Rocket before the end of the year. And you're absolutely right. I mean, from the small glimpses that we've seen from him, I mean, let's be honest, you don't get drafted into the NHL, just because you look good. Or even on paper for that matter. Obviously there were scouts that were looking at him and whatnot. So I know I'm not going to mock you for that, for saying that he has NHL ready hands. But on the topic of Trois Rivières, we're starting to see the roster take shape a little bit. We're still waiting for the official roster to even come out, for that matter. But you've been following them a little bit, and you were mentioning to me off air that there was a few players that kind of stood out. One of them being Archambault, but there's a couple of other players that you think might actually make an impact with the Lyon this year.
I really liked what the Trois Rivières Lyon and specifically GM Marc-Andre Bergeron, a former Hab, might I add, did with the roster in the offseason. They didn't make that many free agency additions, but the ones they made were really interesting, and they definitely will contribute to the team's success down the line. One of the main ones that's really important is that their defense is rock solid, and it definitely is an ECHL defense in a lot of ways. Big, tough guys who can play big minutes, not exactly talented offensively, but they're big defensive players who can also get a fight in and bring the fans to their feet when they want to. One of the main ones I'm going to bring up, the two main ones I'm going to bring up, is Mathieu Gagnon, who is, again, a former member of the Canadiens organization. As the St. John's Ice Caps signed him to a one-year deal in 2016-17. He never wound up playing for them, as David Brohl kind of took his role as the team's enforcer, but he's bounced around here and there, and he managed to find a full-time role in the ECHL last season with the Wichita Thunder, where he put up 14 points over 66 games. Leading on from that, the player who I think will be the captain of the Trois Rivières Lyon next year is Mathieu Brodeur, a 31-year-old defenseman, former third-round pick of the Phoenix Coyotes, who has had one heck of a journeyman career and was actually a full-time player in the AHL for the better part of 6 seasons. This past season, he actually managed to win the Kelly Cup title with the Fort Wayne Comets, and he's bounced around here and there, played in the LNH a little bit, but he's a big, tough, physical defenseman and a proven leader on and off the ice. I think one of the best things that a lot of Canadians, or that a lot of fans of the Canadiens organization will be realizing, is that ECHL hockey always brings really, really great stories with it, and players who have really, really interesting backstories and backgrounds. And to bring a reference to something that me and Sebastian were talking about a bit on and off during this podcast, the Trois Rivières Lyon will have a lot of Trevor Job-like players, a lot of guys who are just kind of bounced around the league here and there, once again, to throw my obscure reference in for the day. And I just think they'll have a lot of interesting guys to come in and step up. And I definitely think they'll have a chance at doing what the Newfoundland Growlers did, which was winning a Kelly Cup title in their first season. While I don't think they're quite near that just yet, I do think they're a playoff-ready team with the right players and with the right system. And I think GM Marc-Andre Bergeron has done a fantastic job so far with Lyon.
And for the final minute of this segment, I'm just gonna put this out there, and I'm sure both of you will appreciate this kind of news. And Scott, you were dead on when saying that the ECHL is so full of these underdog stories, so to speak, that people just fighting tooth and nail to be able to continue their dream of playing hockey. The Trois Rivières organization actually posted a tweet 2 days ago, a couple of days ago, as a matter of fact, inviting people to a tryout camp between September the 12th and September the 14th. Now, this tryout camp is mostly going to be invites from the U Sport League, the North American Hockey League, the Quebec Junior Major, but there's also going to be some people that can come in from Europe and whatnot. So I mean, I think you guys would also I think you guys appreciate this kind of invite, because it's not something that we see that often anymore, having these open tryouts. Am I correct?
Well, the thing is, most people are probably going to put it to the side that, these are just players who they're just going to throw and give a shot to and say, there's the door, we'll see you later. But there's actually been a lot of cases, there's been a couple of cases at least, of guys who were from these kind of situations or systems like U Sports and the MAH and stuff like that, who have gone on to have really good careers. A guy I've talked about on and off in this podcast and in a few pieces I wrote is Anthony Beauregard, and he played for the Concordia University for 2 seasons, won the U Sports Player of the Year in 2017-18, and was the ECHL MVP last season. So I think there's definitely a point to be made that these guys aren't just players that can be brushed to the side. A lot of them have really high upside, and speaking of Concordia once again, Laval even has a Concordia contracted player right now in defenseman Carl Neal. So I definitely think there's a lot to be excited about for a few of these guys, and it'll be an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about like I said, it's not only just players that are trying to continue, and then just hold on for this, hold on the dream, so to speak. I mean, Trois-Rivières has been brought in so the Canadians can use a 3-tier system for their prospects. A lot like what baseball does with the AAA and AA teams. That baseball goes even further. They got single A and single A ball, long winter leagues, all that kind of stuff. But the basics of it is that this new generation of hockey is going to be, you got the ECHL, which is the farm team for the AHL, which is the farm team for the NHL. And we've seen it before. There are ECHL players that made it to the NHL and has actually had successful careers, right, Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean, like David Desharnais would be the poster child for that, right? Like,
there you go.
He was the Habs' #1 centerman when they went on a almost Stanley Cup final run that was taken out by Chris Kreider.
No comment.
but the fact that a player that like barely made the ECHL was Montreal's #1 centerman, like he shouldn't have been Montreal's #1 centerman. He would have been a great second line center, but he should not have been in that first center role. At the same time, with him in that spot, Montreal went really far in the playoffs, which is awesome.
And leading on from that, you have Alex Belzil, who was the Rockets' first-line center and came from probably an even more difficult background than David Desharnais, if you can believe that. Having been cut at pretty much every single professional level he played at, going all the way back to Double C in his small town of Saint Eloi, Quebec, which had a population of less than 250 people. So, yeah, I mean, the ECHL is a league that a lot of people will brush to the side, but as they're making a push to be more of a development league, these guys are still going to seem to slip through the cracks here and there, and who knows, maybe we'll find another one coming into the NHL sooner than later.
We're going to extend this segment just a little bit longer. I mean, I know I said it was like a final 60 seconds earlier.
Yeah, but just for a little bit of recent news.
A little bit of recent news, exactly. It was just kind of dropped on our lap. Sebastian, you want to talk about Eve Gascon?
Yeah, so this is just this awesome storyline coming out of the Gatineau Olympics training camp. And so Eve Gascon is a goaltender who spent the last 2 seasons playing AAA in the QM AAA League. And
which is midget AAA, yeah.
Which is midget AAA. And she is now one of the final 3 goaltenders left in camp for the Gatineau Olympics. So 2 goalies have already been cut, one of whom was cut today. So she's one of the final ones left. And last season, she played in 25 games and posted an .893 save percentage, which doesn't sound amazing on the surface, but her backup played 20 games, so only 5 less than she played in. And his name is Edouard Gauthier, and he posted an .866, so almost 3 full percentage points lower than hers, which goes to show that she was by far the best goalie on her team and is now getting a real shot at the QMJHL, which would be awesome because I'm going to study in Ottawa at Carleton, and I am so going to watch some Gatineau games and would be even more enamored to do so if she is starting with some of them.
You got to think about it. With the NHL being so far removed from the meta realms of the past, seeing this kind of stuff come through is pretty freaking cool to see, honestly, and I'm really looking forward to it.
And the worst case scenario for Gascon is that if she doesn't make the team, well, you know what? She already has an agreement to play for the University of Minnesota Duluth. So,
exactly.
Regardless, she's going to be playing some high-profile hockey. So, congratulations to her. Scott, Sebastian, thank you so much for this segment, guys.
Hey! Hey!
And now it's time for the guest of the show. It is my absolute pleasure to present this pre-recorded interview featuring myself, Scott, and Sebastian once again, with Anthony DeMarco, who is an NHL correspondent for the 4th period. Anthony had a lot to say, Anthony is also a Flyers fan, so hold on to your seats, ladies and gentlemen, because he's got a lot of beef with Montreal. But he tries to be objective, but you're gonna see he's still a very, very well informed character. So enjoy this next interview with Anthony DeMarco from the fourth period. Now, life is full of enigmas or mysteries, if you will. One of sports' greatest enigmas is the one of partisanship. The logic dictates that you grow up in a city and you cheer for the team playing in that city or the one closest to you. If you live in Montreal, you cheer for the Canadiens. If you live in San Francisco, chances are you're going to cheer for the 49ers, and so forth. However, in some instances, there is always that one person in your life that kind of stands out because where his or her allegiance lies. A friend or family member who although lives in Winnipeg, for example, is a San Jose Sharks fan. The reason behind it is never clear, but, sometimes they're just bandwagoners. Our next special guest is definitely not a bandwagoner, however, but although he is a Montrealer, he happens to be a Flyers fan of all things. But, however, it is with great pleasure, along with Scott and Sebastian, to introduce to you from the fourth period, Mr. Anthony DeMarco. Welcome, sir.
Glad to be here, man. And yeah, definitely crossing enemy lines today, but I'm looking forward to doing this.
And once again, like I mentioned, Scott Cowan and Sebastian High are going to be part of this panel. Welcome to you, gentlemen, as well. As Anthony mentioned, he is an NHL correspondent at the fourth period, has already started to build his reputation as a reputable insider for the Philadelphia Flyers. But before we get into his work, and we're going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room, so to speak. So, Anthony, why the Flyers, man? I mean, you're in Montreal.
Look, grew up as a Flyers fan. My dad was a big part of that. And, being 27 years old, I really only truly started following hockey as like a diehard, let's say, fan when I was, I would say, about 11, 12 years old. So that was right after the first lockout. And that was like a really fun time to be a Flyers fan. They brought in guys like Danny Briere and Kimmo Timonen, Scott Hartnell, and then the guys from their own system and come up the ranks like Jeff Carter and Mike Richards. Shortly thereafter, they went to the Stanley Cup final in 2010. But then slowly but surely, as I got into my 20s, my love for being a fan kind of transitioned into being I guess you could say, more of a journalist and an objective type of watcher. And that's how I transitioned into working for the fourth period. I started off as the Flyers correspondent, and now I'm the NHL correspondent. So while I guess at heart I'm technically still a fan of the Flyers, I've really kind of blossomed into just like an objective journalist. And that's what I really strive to be when I cover the sport. And even though maybe 20 years ago I would have despised the Habs, now I look at them in the most objective kind of microscope I can.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your, journalistic career. In the media world, especially, it's really, really hard to get into anything, whether it's written or even, starting a podcast. Is, although there's the ease of access, it's still, hard to actually make it some sort of career out of it. So maybe how about you tell us a little bit how did you get into the media world, and just tell the world, maybe how did you make your way to work alongside someone like Dave Pagnotta at the fourth period?
Well, much like a lot of us, following high school, I went to CEGEP and I attended John Abbott. I graduated in 2013 in media arts specifically. And I got to Concordia and I was in journalism, and I wasn't exactly the most responsible 20-year-old there ever was. And I didn't last a whole lot long there. And I stopped going to school in 2014, stopped pursuing it. And then, I had my actual job, my day job. But on the side, I would say for just about 3 years, I would write just randomly. I used to write for this website called Broad Street Hockey, which is a division of SB Nation, but not like as an actual employee. They just had this thing called like fan posts.
Yeah.
I used to write on this other website that ceases to exist now called the Crunch Picks. And then in the summer of 2017, I just took a shot in the dark, and I DM'd Dennis Bernstein, who is the senior writer and Los Angeles Kings correspondent and insider for the fourth period. And he read my work, gave me a crack, and the rest is history. It's